about making the birthing woman purr. So the P stands for position. So there are lots of, like you may have heard of different labor positions, pushing positions, but basically it's what's going to be most comfortable for her, and it will change as she goes through the stages of labor. But if you are stagnant, your labor is stagnant. So you want to be changing it up at least every hour. This says 15 to 30 minutes or so. Even if you're laboring in the tub or the shower or laying down on the bed, you get up to pee once an hour and you go back to the bed, that's still changing it up. If you do go into labor in the middle of the night, you're going to want to be resting as much as possible, even though adrenaline might be like, you can't actually sleep. But especially with the first baby, if you don't know, like you don't know how long your labor is going to last. Typical first baby is 18 to 24 hours. And that's not all like what you saw in the video, screaming and yelling. It's kind of a gradual, a crescendo to the birth part. So you're going to try to rest in early labor, especially if it's in the middle of the night. And that's always good, like starting with a bath, a shower. I teach the Bradley method, so it's like Dr. Bradley says, eat, drink, bath, walk, nap. Eat, drink, walk, bath, nap. So if you eat something, make sure you're drinking something. You go for a walk, you take a bath, you take a nap. Like that could take all afternoon, or 3 to 4 hours, and then you can kind of start over doing that. So as the birth partner, part of making her purr is, so we've got position, and then the U stands for urination. So in order to have anything to pee, she needs to be hydrated. So a sip of water, juice, whatever, after each surge or contraction, just to keep her hydrated. As little as a half a cup an hour is good. That way she's, staying fairly well hydrated. If she wants to drink more than that, that's great. If you want to do Gatorade or Powerade or Labor Aid, but just plain water is adequate as well. And then the 3 R's stand for rest, relaxation, and reassurance. So you want to make sure she's getting enough rest, resting between contractions, changing positions, good time for sips of water, and make sure she's relaxing during and between contractions. So relaxing during a contraction is definitely a learned skill. So if you have like hypnosis kinds of tapes or CDs, something you're listening to on your iPod, your MP3 player, this is not the kind of relaxation that we do kicking back on the deck in the summer or sitting on the couch with the remote. This is, you're trying to relax around something, that a uterus that is working to push a baby out of your body. So learning how to relax in the middle of like stress or intense sensation. Just to sweeten things up a little, I'm going to pass around these lifesavers. So this is a little object lesson in what your body is doing to have this baby. So the purpose of labor is to open the door for the baby to come through. And the door is called the cervix. And the cervix has to thin and open to let the baby come through. The cervix is like at the top of the birth canal, and it has to move forward actually in the woman's body, and then it will shorten and open. So this lifesaver is representative of your cervix. You will never look at lifesavers the same way again now. So don't bite it, you're not allowed to crunch it, but as it melts and starts to dissolve, you'll notice that it gets thinner, and the hole in the middle gets bigger. So it's thinning and it's opening. So dilation is the opening and thinning is the effacing. That's the shrinking, the shortening of the cervix. Does that make sense? So that's what labor is doing, is opening that cervix and thinning that cervix. So there are powerful muscles in the uterus that are pulling that cervix back around the baby's head, pushing the baby down into the pelvis, and that's where the sensations of labor come from, is that muscle, the uterus in a woman's body is the strongest muscle in her body. And in labor, like, you get a sense of that, how powerful it is, how intense those sensations can be, and whether or not you want to use pain is a very subjective thing. Some women call it pain. I personally called it pain, but it was copable, it was doable, it was manageable. It would come and go. It had a beginning and an end. and it was positive pain. So it's not like my body telling me that it's time to go to the hospital, that I was ill, that I had broken something and needed medical attention. It's like, okay, I'm having a baby. I need to get somewhere safe and private and secure and dim and quiet so that my body can do what it needs to do to have this baby. It's not a sign that you're sick. It's not a sign that you need to rush off to your place of birth at the first sign of labor. So, so you do get rest between. The relaxation is something you're going to want to practice. Like, it sounds like you've taken a birth class. I know you've been working on some hypnosis stuff, hypno babies. And if you haven't, signed up for a class, we do have a bunch of information over here, or if you want to ask me questions after. I took a class with all 4 of my babies, just because I'm also a birth nerd. So I took a hypnobirthing class. I took a birthing from within class. I'm a Bradley teacher. So I just can't get enough. So the classes I teach now are kind of a mix of everything I've learned over the years. The next little sheet in your cheat sheet packet, this is the Cosmo quiz. And if you've heard of the 5 love languages, it was a book that came out probably over 10 years ago by Gary Chapman. This is a super brief 5-question little survey to figure out what you and your partner's love language is. So there's a little column for mom to check boxes and a little column for dad for partner. And then it tells you if you have a giving and a receiving love language. And it will tell you, do you feel loved most by physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, acts of service, or quality time? And what is your giving? How do you give love? By telling people, by showing people, by doing chores for people. So that can be a clue as to what she will appreciate in labor, and just a way to kind of hone your relationship. For me, as in many birth classes, you'll practice hands-on stuff. We'll do some hands-on stuff today. It felt so great in class. And then when it came to laboring with my first baby, I did not want to be touched. So all of that lovely stuff we practiced in class was out the window because it was like overload for me. It was just this tactile, sensory, like too much. I could not be touched. The bathtub was a huge help. So they call a full tub of water the midwife's epidural because it is so effective in taking the edge off of those contractions. You know how awesome it feels to sink into a hot tub? Especially like after a day of skiing or just a hard day at work, or even just standing in the shower, like a good hot shower. So water for laboring women is huge. It's a really great tool to use in labor, which is why it's included in Dr. Bradley's Eat, Drink, Walk, Bath, Nap. So and that can include a shower. So you can take that little quiz on your own, kind of come together and figure out where you're at in labor. This is a lovely little cheat sheet, an overview of labor for partners. So it's this green and blue sheet, and it's got labor divided into stages. So you've got early, first stage, active first stage, transition, and then, second stage, which is pushing. And this sheet has tips for support techniques, that very last column there on the right. But emotional signs, this is something from the Bradley method. Like early labor, you're excited. It's like, yes, it's birthday. Our baby is probably going to be born in the next 18 to 24 hours. And then as labor progresses, the contractions are getting closer together, longer and stronger. It's like, oh, okay. Acceptance, this is labor. You start to get a little bit more serious and down to business. Not so excited, maybe not so smiley, but not suffering either. In fact, suffering never has to be part of childbirth. You can be in pain and not suffer. You can be pain-free and suffering. So you could have an epidural and not be feeling anything and still not feel like you're part of the birth team, that this is something happening to you, that you're not really participating in it. So our culture really equates pain with suffering, and they do not have to equate in childbirth. I've seen very vocal women feeling every bit of every nerve fiber, every muscle, every cell in that labor process, but they are not suffering. Does that make sense? So pain does not have to equal suffering. So as you move into transition, which is the part of labor that is most portrayed in the movies, like that kind of the toughest part where women are like, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I want to do this, whose stupid idea was this to even have a baby, where most women will ask for medication. Often that part comes right before it's time to push, and if more women and partners knew about that, we would have a lower epidural rate, which is, by the way, 98% in Utah. In the rest of the country, it's about 60%. Utah has the highest epidural rate on the planet. So yeah. It was also perfected here at the U. So if you're going to get an epidural, Utah's the place to do it because they know what they're doing. But 98% of birth-giving women do not need to be numb from the waist down to do it. So that's why we're doing what we're doing, letting partners know that there are ways to get through it without that medication. So giving up and surrendering and doubting that you can do it is just a sign that things are getting close. And she actually can do it. So I am not, this is not like a full-on childbirth class. We could spend the whole time just talking about the basics of labor. Over on this whole house labor rehearsal sheet, so this is a way for you to think about your home, your environment, your space as labor support, as labor tools. Did you not get one of those? Oh, this one right here. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I just had one per couple. But I do have plenty if you want one, Annalyn.
Oh, that's okay.
So this just gives different positions for each room of your home and how you can utilize your home to support yourself in labor. If your goal, and I don't know that everyone's goal in here is to have an unmedicated birth, those of you that I know are coming to the birth center, like, we don't do epidurals here. So you have to transfer to get an epidural. But if you can just shorten the time that you're using that technology, it's safer for you and for your baby. So if you can think about staying home as long as possible before going into your place of birth, this is a way that can be helpful in using your home as labor support. So living room, kitchen, bathroom, hallway, like every room, every area of your house can be used to support yourself in labor. If you're dragging couch cushions into the bedroom or bedroom cushions into the living room to, arrange on the couch to be like a labor station. You can use like countertops in the kitchen to like lean over on. And there's something called the labor dance or the hip sway. And most women, even if they don't take a class, have never cracked a book on labor and childbirth, they'll automatically do this thing where they shift their weight from foot to foot and they move their hips in a figure-8 fashion. And it's called the labor dance. Belly dancing originated in labor with women doing this little nice figure-8. Helps that baby come down, it's more comfortable. It's easier to move a little bit in labor than to just kind of be like, climbing into your bed, pulling the sheets up to your chin and like looking at the clock. That will cause misery and suffering. Just watching time pass and not moving with your body to make yourself more comfortable and to facilitate the process. The best thing you can do for your labor is to walk. It will shorten your labor. Kind of a paradox, like I said, if you go into labor at midnight or 2 in the morning, you are going to want to try to maximize your rest, but then once labor gets going, walking is going to really shorten and facilitate labor, help that baby to come down in a good position. And you can do that like leaning over the kitchen table, the kitchen counter, leaning up against a wall, over the couch, wherever you are in your home. So that's what that whole house labor rehearsal is. On the back side of the whole house labor rehearsal is a list of labor tools that you can have on hand. And they're household items. So like a rice sock, or if you have one of those little heat packs that you toss in the microwave, massage oil or lotion, happy massager, so any little massage tools you have around the house. Anybody heard of a rebozo? So it's actually like a long scarf, a long piece of fabric. If you have a sarong, a big shawl, you can use that in labor to help you be more comfortable in labor. They're actually like rebozo workshops. It's a Mexican shawl, and they use it for Sorry. It's okay. They use it for carrying their babies, for binding up their hips or their bellies. You can kind of jiggle babies into good position. So go home and Google reboso. It's kind of a newish thing on the US scene. A rolling pin can be used for like back labor, just getting some pressure going on her back. Tennis balls in a sock can be another little labor tool. So 2 of them together, side by side on her lower back, just rolling them up and down can feel really good. If she's having back labor, even if she's not, can feel really nice. And then ice packs, heat packs, birth ball, if you've got like a Pilates type ball at home, start sitting on it. Keeps your baby in better alignment for birth, so your baby's not posterior or sunny side up looking at the ceiling. How are those cervixes melting? Are they all gone? Yeah?
Yeah. I'm too impatient.
You're
So I don't know what that means.
do we need another round
Oh,
of... If I'll pass it around in case anyone wants. If you forgot and bit through it like I would probably do. Okay. Just gonna... So anyone know what this is? It is a birth stool. There are many different styles and variations of a birth stool. This is a pretty basic one, but it allows mom to be in an upright position and use gravity instead of kind of the typical, like a lot of women in the US feel like they have to be flat on their backs with their legs up in stirrups to have a baby, and that's about the absolute worst position you could give birth in. So not that you'd want to spend a whole lot of time, you'd want to wait to use this till you're actually pushing, but it gives you some leverage and you're using gravity, whereas if a woman is laying on her back, she's actually pushing her baby uphill, just the way that the birth canal is situated in the body. So just kind of demonstrate if you want to try this out at some point during our little time here. After the whole house labor rehearsal is a whole list alphabetically of comfort measures in labor. So you've got some good cheat sheets going on here. So abdominal breathing. Most people are familiar with abdominal breathing if you take yoga, if you sing, if you play a woodwind, wind instrument, you've learned how to breathe from your diaphragm and not from your chest. If you don't do any of those things or haven't kind of relearned the proper way to breathe, you may like suck your belly in and breathe from your chest, because you've got to be cute and skinny, right? And kind of holding your belly or maintaining some tone during pregnancy can help with lower back issues. But when you inhale, you want your belly to expand. When you exhale, you know, it relaxes, it rises and falls as you breathe. The Birthing from Within is this really great book, and Childbirth Ed Method by Pam England, and she calls it breath awareness. And this is like the easiest birth technique ever, is just coming to the breath. And all it is paying attention to your breath. So as you're sitting there in your chair, you just notice when you breathe in, make sure your stomach rises, and then you notice your breath out. And the more attention you pay to your breath, the slower your breath becomes, the slower your breathing becomes, the more you relax. And it's this lovely cycle. So you start to notice my inhale doesn't take as long as my exhale. And there's a pause at the end of the exhalation before I breathe in. And as you just start to notice that, and you feel your body relax, you can start thinking things like breathe in peace, breathe out stress. And you can like spend your whole labor like that. And for those of us that have faster labor, sometimes that's like all you can do is come to the breath. I don't wish fast labors on you. I know for those of you giving birth, this is the first time that sounds crazy, but you want a little time for your brain to catch up with your body. So abdominal breathing, nice basic thing that you can practice sitting where you are right now, standing at the sink, cooking dinner, driving a car, talking on the phone, whatever you're doing, you can come to the breath and just pay attention to the breath and you automatically relax. I'm not going to go through everything on this list, but I did want you to have something tangible, tactile, like readable that you could take home and Google. And honestly, since almost everyone has smartphones these days, if you're in labor and you're stuck, I'd like go to Pinterest, go to Google and just like, labor positions or pushing techniques or being comfortable in labor, and you'll get tons of stuff coming up. It's nice if you kind of already have an idea before you go into this. But if as guys, you could be running on caffeine and adrenaline and you've been awake for, 30 hours. Hopefully not, but, so if your brain power, and, take advantage of the staff, of the nurse, the midwife, the doctor, if you've hired a doula. If you have a childbirth educator that you can text or call on the phone, it's like, okay, this is what's happening. What do you suggest? Or you get out your little cheat sheet. It's like, oh, well, we haven't tried this. So that can be really, really helpful to utilize those around you, especially if this is, even if it's your 5th baby. Every birth is different. You forget stuff. There's always new stuff to learn. And don't feel like you can't ask the people around you for help and support. Okay, this last page is the take charge routine. So this is a good thing to remember for transition. That tough part in labor, thankfully transition is usually a shorter time in labor. Labor math, so if you've had a cervical check and you were at a 6 and it took you've been working 12 hours to get to a 6, that doesn't mean it's going to take you 2 hours for each centimeter till you get to a 10, which is when you're complete. Labor math does not add up. You can complete dilation from 6 to a 10 and start pushing in 5 minutes, in 1 hour. It might take an hour per centimeter, but don't do labor math. And as her partner, you don't want to let her do labor math. Because if it were me, I'd be like, well, just send in that anesthesiologist because I don't have another, 8 hours in me. So you want to keep the vaginal checks, the cervical checks to a minimum, just so you don't, because it doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you when that baby's coming or how much labor you have left. So you really want to keep that to a minimum.